and we are now recording. Again, thanks for joining me tonight. I'll make it worth your while. If you need to jump out at any time, please do. If you ever have any questions, please ask. A little bit about myself. I live in central Utah, a little tiny town called Monroe, population about 2,500 people. I like the rural life here very much. I've been teaching both high school and college for 25 years. And I've been with Mohave. I think this is my 4th year with Mohave, but I have taught with our local community college here called Snow College for many years, probably 15, maybe a little bit more. But anyway, I do teach high school day by day. I teach college classes at the high school. I teach night classes, and then I have this one on top of that. I'm a paramedic. I run as a paramedic here locally. I have for about 15 years. And I got involved with Mohave way back when. I was in the first class here in my area to upgrade from EMT to paramedic. I was in the very first class. That was not offered through Mohave. It was offered through another company. That company decided the owner retired, and we wanted to keep paramedic programs going. And that's what started our relationship with Mohave. So we actually teach paramedic courses here. I think this is our 4th year doing that as well. And so that's all through Mohave, but I've had good experiences with Mohave. There's been some change in management recently. It's been good changes. I think things are positive and moving in the right direction. So thanks for being here. I hope you'll get something out of this review. The midterm exams will open at about 11 o'clock tonight, about 10 o'clock your time. I just kind of randomly set a time. I don't recommend you just rush right into them and do them like in the morning or tomorrow or something. I would recommend you spend a little bit of time going back through your notes, going back through your study guides. Hopefully you've done those. Go back and look at all of your fillable images. Hopefully you've done those as well. These tests are timed, and if you're trying to look up everything, if you're trying to scan the book and find all the answers, you are welcome to do that, but you will run out of time. Just know that it's not designed that way. This is your chance to prove that you've learned some things through the program we've set up. And so give it your best shot. I recommend you do the entire exam, mark the ones you don't know, and do the ones you do first, and then go back and then spend the time looking at the ones that may be harder or you're not quite sure of. The first part of the test is anatomy only. It's going to be exactly the same pictures that are in your fillable images under the modules. They're exactly the same. I took them directly from that, and they're clickable. They're very simple. All you have to do is it'll ask you something like, where is the tibia? And you just simply click on it. And that's all you have to do. Just make sure you click directly on it. Don't go too much to the side. It's designed to have a hot spot, so you need to click in the right spot for it to register correctly. The physiology portion is mostly multiple choice with a large matching section, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. Neither one are designed to be hard. A lot of the questions are very similar, if not some the same as the homework. So hopefully you've done your homework questions and you'll find the test to be pretty straightforward. The final exam is much more comprehensive and much more challenging as far as that goes. So this is just a good check to see where you're at. Midterms are graded a little bit differently than the homework, so you'll definitely want to give it your best shot. It's designed for you to only do it one time. I will not open it up for a second attempt, unless for some reason you have a major crash or something. But as long as you don't submit it, the test stays open until the time elapses. So are there any questions before we get started that I can answer? Okay. I sure wish we had more here. I literally have 40 students. And so you 5 that are here tonight will get the benefit of it because I write the exams, not Mohave, not the textbook. I write everything, and I write my own study guides. I write my own materials. So just so you know, I'm basically helping you really learn the material you need to know to do well. So the way I'm going to do this tonight is I'm going to write it. I sent out a copy of the actual study guide. I apologize. The one I sent last night was kind of small for some reason. I hurry and redid it tonight a couple hours ago and resent it. It's okay if you don't have it. It's okay if you're using the original one. The questions are the same. I just tried to make it a little more friendly so you had space to write, but it's okay either way. Just listening will be beneficial to you, but if you want to write stuff down, it will be helpful to you. So here we go. The first thing I'm going to do is just share my tablet here because I'm going to be writing on it. So give me just a second. It takes just a second. Well, actually, that went very quickly. That's good. All right. Someone's chatting. Let me just double check here. Your printer won't work. I'm sorry, Amy. It's okay. You can write this on paper if you want, or just listen carefully. Again, I'm recording this. All right, here we go. So you should see in front of you the notes that I have. I'm going to be writing. Sorry if my handwriting is not the best. I'll do the very best I can. I use a program called Notability. I use it for all my classes, for my live classes. And so my students are all used to writing on iPads and tablets. It's so much nicer. They get used to it and they like it a lot. All right, here we go. Simple. I keep this very simple. I'm not going to write a ton of things, just the things that I think are important. We may have people join throughout, so I may have to pause for a second and let them in. All right, we're going to start with the difference between organic and inorganic. So here we go. Organic molecules. I'll write as clearly as I can. And inorganic molecules. Organic molecules, the word itself means comes from life. They're any molecule that comes from a living thing, living or dead, just depending. They contain, or will always contain, carbon and hydrogen. A good example I'll give you is C6H12O6. This is glucose. Glucose comes from living things. It comes from plants. Plants make it for us. And notice that it has carbon and hydrogen in it. It's okay if it has the oxygen in it. As long as it has the carbon and hydrogen, it's classified as organic. Inorganic molecules do not come from life. I will abbreviate as I go, so don't think I have really bad English. I don't, but I will abbreviate as we go. Not from life, and they will not contain both the carbon and hydrogen simultaneously. For example, carbon dioxide is CO2. It does have carbon in it, but even though we breathe it out, it's not something that's manufactured through living processes. Another example would be water, H2O. It has the hydrogen, but not the carbon. Another example, NaCl, table salt, has neither. So this is just a quick example of the difference between organic and inorganic molecules. I'll go to the bottom of a page and then I'll stop and see if you have any questions. The next thing you'll need to understand is a bit about the pH scale, how it works, and why it's important. So the pH scale is designed on a logarithmic scale. It goes from 0 to 14. 7 is considered what we call neutral. Anything below 7 is considered to be an acid. Anything above 7 is considered to be a base. So a good way to think about this is the further you go on each end, the stronger it gets. So I'm going to write strong and weak here, and then exactly the same thing here, weak, strong. And it's a scale. Sorry. So the closer you get to the ends, the stronger it gets. The closer you are to the middle, the weaker it gets. That's why 7 is in the middle. 7 is pure distilled water, pH of 7. So to give you some examples of what exists at each level, this would be like battery acid, very, very strong. Let me make my pencil just a tiny bit smaller. Stomach acids right about here. Things like, coffee is about 5, milk is about 6. And of course, we could go on and on. Here's lemon juice. So these are acidic products. The reason why they're acidic is they contain what we call protons, or H+. On the other side of the equation here, bases are the same thing but opposite. They're equivalent but opposite. So for example, blood has a pH of around 8. Bleach is around 10. Oven cleaner is very strong base. And some of the strongest bases are things like lye. Very, very powerful, very, very strong. What makes them base is the presence of what's called hydroxide ions, which is OH minus. That's what gives them their strength. The more OH minus you have, the hydroxide, the stronger the base. The more H plus you have, the stronger the acid. Now, notice that if I add those two together, if I add H plus and OH minus, what you get is pure water. So an interesting experiment I like to do in my classroom is I'll take battery acid and I'll mix it with lye. So I mix a 0 and a 14, which are polar opposites, super strong, melt your face off, burn your skin. When you mix them together in equal parts, you can neutralize it and it becomes pure water. And my students like that. I stick my finger in it and they're like, wow, don't do that. And I'm like, no, it's neutral. And just for the sake of our anatomy physiology class here, just so you know, if you didn't already, the human body itself maintains a pH of blood somewhere around 7.35 to 7.45. That's blood with all the components dissolved in it and everything that's going for it. Notice it's a very narrow range. It cannot vary hardly at all. I told you I was a paramedic, or I am a paramedic, and I've been on a lot of cardiac arrests, unfortunately. It's part of the job. And when a person's down for a long time, when their body stops correcting the acid-base imbalance, the body becomes acidic. And literally, if the body drops to like 6.9 to 6.8, they're gone. There's so much lactic acid in the blood that it's a really bad situation and very hard to treat and reverse. So just notice the range is very small. Okay, so that's really all we're going to say on the pH scale. Now, the word buffers, I need to mention really quick. Buffers basically balance. They balance the acids and base. So to give you an example, if you drink like a bunch of lemonade has a pH of like between 2 and 3. It's quite acidic. Why don't we drop down dead when we drink lemonade? It should be toxic to us. It would lower our blood pH. The reason why is in our blood, we have several different ions that actually balance that. Things like calcium, for instance. When you drink something with a lot of acid in it, the body can release these products from our bones and neutralize that and bring it back to a stable neutral, or at least what's normal for our blood. The opposite is true if our blood becomes basic. Now, obviously, if you drink battery acid, technically your body should be able to fix that pH, but the problem is it's too slow. And so by drinking battery acid, the pH is so strong that the body can't neutralize it fast enough and you die anyway. It can handle things like milk and coffee, but it can't handle things like battery acid or lye. So when you move on this scale, you move by powers of 10. So each one of the movements is by a power of 10, not a power of 1, nor do we add them together. So to give you an example, if I have a pH of 5, which is right here, if I have a pH of 5, how much stronger is pH 2 than 5? So I want to know how much stronger is pH 2 than 5. It's really pretty easy. Some people, they say, well, just subtract them. 5 minus 2 is 3. Draw 1 and put that many zeros behind it, and that's how much stronger it is. Or you could say it's 10 times 10 times 10. That's another way to do it. So anyway, that's how the pH scale works. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about are just abdominal regions. Very quickly, right out of your textbook, very simple. So we divide the abdominal quadrant into into 9 areas. And then we divide it also into regional quadrants based on the organs that are present. So this is the right hypochondriac. Hypochondriac literally means below cartilage. The word actually is a misnomer. It comes from the fact that there's cartilage in between your ribs. And I guess back in the day where we thought our heart was our soul, the word kind of stuck, this word hypochondriac, which means below the cartilage of the ribs. It still sticks today. This is the epigastric region, which literally means above the stomach. And then we have the left hypogastric. We have the umbilical right in the middle. Umbilical right in the middle. We have the right lumbar. And we have the left lumbar. I'm sorry if I'm a little sloppy. I can do better. Just going kind of fast here. And then I have what's called the right iliac, the hypogastric, which means below the stomach, and then the left iliac. So this is a region a doctor might use to describe, where they're going to cut into you for surgery, where an injury might be, things like that. Now we take these again, we can divide them into quadrants. The quadrants are abbreviated right upper quadrant, RUQ, right lower quadrant, RLQ, left upper quadrant, LUQ, and left lower quadrant, LLQ. So if I ask you what major organs are in the RUQ, you can see that the liver takes up a large portion of the RUQ, including the gallbladder. So when someone has pain in this area, we might consider it might be something related to those. In the right lower quadrant, the real only thing besides a lot of intestines is the appendix. The appendix is in here. The left upper quadrant has your stomach, a little bit of your liver, and then another big one is your spleen. Your spleen is actually right there. You can see it behind those ribs. So another organ right there. The left lower quadrant is basically just a lot of intestines. Now, some have asked, well, what about things like testes and not testes, but sorry, ovaries or the bladder? In reality, those are actually down lower in the pelvic cavity, but we could say the pain can radiate into the quadrants of the abdomen, but generally speaking, we call those in a separate cavity, which is the pelvic cavity. All right, that's page 1. Any questions I can answer on page 1? Anyone?
I have a question.
Go
How
ahead.
come for the hypochondriac, how come it's not the same for the right side or the left side?
It is.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, I wrote gastric, didn't I?
Yeah, I wrote it down. I'm like, wait a second.
I'm sorry.
Okay. It's okay. I just got confused there for a second. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Sorry, I've been teaching all day. Been at school since 7:30. It's been a long day, so I apologize for that. All right, let's move on to question number 4. Pretty straightforward. The directional portions of the body. There's more than what I have listed here, but anyway, anything going towards the head is called superior. Anything going towards the feet is called inferior. Yeah, please watch me. I may make mistakes. My brain might go faster than my hand or whatever. The back of the body is posterior. The front of the body is anterior. It can be called frontal as well. It's fine. And then anything close to the attachment up to the body, such as your arm is attached at your shoulder, is called proximal because it's close to the point of attachment. This is your point of attachment. Point of attachment. And anything away from the point of attachment is called distal. Okay, now I'm going to draw these others really quick. So if I divide the body like this, straight down the middle, I divide the body into front and back planes. This is called the coronal. It's also called the frontal plane. Doesn't matter which word you use. When we divide the body this way into left and right portions, we refer to this as a sagittal plane. And then anytime we cut the body on a plane that's perpendicular to those, we will call this transverse. Who cares? Well, for instance, a radiology technician might be given orders by a doctor to make a sagittal plane of the head or a transverse plane of the abdomen. It's very specific, and there are more planes than this. We could do claviculares, we could do mid-clavicular, we could do mid-axillary, but for our purposes, that's really good enough for what we're studying. Okay, the word homeostasis literally refers to the body's ability. It's the body's ability to maintain a constant internal environment. And it does this by using feedback mechanisms, which we'll talk about in a minute. Feedback mechanisms. The word homeo, it means same. Stasis also means same. So in reality, the word kind of means same. It's our body's constant attempt to maintain everything constant. You get cold, your thermostat changes, your body shivers. You get hot, your body sweats. It's a constant battle to keep everything perfectly working in a state of same. And our bodies are pretty good at it. But that's what homeostasis is, the maintenance of the body's internal environment. All right, just a quick few words on cells. Here's a big example of a cell. I'll only label the most important pieces that we need to know, and just a one-word function. So, of course, the nucleus is here, and its main function is sometimes called the control center. It also houses DNA. That's where your DNA is found. If I were to draw it in there, you can see your DNA is found inside that nucleus. The cell membrane is very important. The cell membrane is a phospholipid bilayer. It is semi-permeable, and it basically acts as a gatekeeper. I'm just going to put it's a barrier between the inside and outside world. It selects what can go in and out of the cell. It's very selective about that, which is a good thing, or we would die. Even breathing something like a little bit of car exhaust, those chemicals could enter cells, but the cell membrane in our brain says nope. But obviously you can get enough of it that it will override this system and will get in anyway, but it will block some things. The big blue thing you see, I don't know if you noticed, but it's attached directly to the nucleus. You can actually see if I blow this up a little bit, you can actually see kind of little doorways. So it's a place that kind of acts like a highway of the cell. We call it the rough ER, rough endoplasmic reticulum. I'll just call it ER. And it's rough because on its surface are these little bumps. You can see these little bumps all over. Those are ribosomes. We'll talk about those in a second. But the rough ER basically is a highway, but because it's got the ribosomes on it, it also makes proteins. It's a site. Let me change the word to, change the word to a site for protein synthesis. It's where if there's ribosomes available, that's where it's made. The ER does not make proteins, but it's places where the mitochondria, where the ribosomes can be, which can allow proteins to be made. The big green thing here is called the Golgi body, or sometimes called the Golgi apparatus. The names are pretty much interchangeable, although some will say one's animal, one's plant. It doesn't really matter. This is a very important component where it does protein packaging. I like to think of it like, the UPS store, if you still have such a thing in your area. You bring a fine piece of maybe a vase or something, and they put it in a box, put packaging peanuts around it, they tape it shut, they label it. That's kind of the Golgi apparatus. What it does with naked proteins, it packages them in such a way that they can leave the cell and travel where they need to go to work and do what they need to do. They have to be carefully packaged so they don't damage and do bad things on the way. All right, we have vesicles. Vesicles are just their storage units. They can contain waste. A little bit different than what we call a lysosome. Lysosomes are within the cell. These are things that are actually being excreted outside the cell. And then we have all these little yellow looking things, and these are microtubules. And there's also part of what we call the cytoskeleton. And it's basically the framework of the cell. Maintains the cell's shape. It also helps hold the tiny little organelles in place. It even allows for things to move along them, like little railroad or highways. They're actually very important. The yellow churro-looking things are called centrioles. I'm just going to write centrioles right here. They're only found in animal cells, and their whole job is part of cell reproduction. We call it mitosis. It actually helps the cells go through mitosis. And then the only other one I want to put on here really quick. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. There's a couple others. The mitochondrion. Look like little jelly beans. We learn in high school chemistry like they're the powerhouse. It's way more complex than a powerhouse. It's basically site of ATP production, where ATP is made for us to use as an energy source. And then I forgot to put the one with ribosomes on it. I actually don't see one pointing right to a ribosome, but maybe I'll just write it here. If I were to point to these little tiny dots, any little tiny dot is a ribosome, and this is where protein synthesis happens. So remember, I mentioned that the ER does not make proteins, but on rough ER, ribosomes are kind of dotted along it, and then proteins are being made there. Okay, and then the last one is smooth ER, which is over here. Smooth ER does not have the ribosomes on it. It also acts like a highway, but another thing that it does, it's actually a site of many different chemical reactions. So, for instance, fat metabolism and other chemical reactions will happen along here, as well as a highway. Okay, now the last one, I'm sorry. The last one is called the nucleolus. Not to be confused with the nucleus. The nucleolus is the blue thing in the middle. And what it actually does is it makes ribosomes. So it makes the little machines that make the proteins. And it's within the nucleus like that. All right, that is the end of page 2. Does anyone have any questions over anything I've talked about on that page? Okay, good. Clear as mud, I hope. All right, number 7. Just a few definitions, pretty straightforward. I'll just write them off to the side. I'm going to change colors for interest's sake. So we have diffusion. I'm going to write them all down. Osmosis, which I accidentally put on there twice. Facilitated diffusion. And then filtration. Whoops. Wow, I really thought there'd be more people here tonight. You guys will get the benefit. Thank you for being here. So diffusion's easy. You go from high to low, no membrane. So I want to tell you a quick story how I remember that. When I was in college, I was actually probably a freshman. I was in a chemistry class. The teacher was going to teach us these very principles that I'm showing you here tonight. And it was one of those classrooms that are tiered, kind of like this. If you've ever been in a classroom at college, you know, the benches go up like this. So you have to walk up the stairs, and the teacher's down here at the bottom in the front of the room. Anyway, the back of the room had a door. And right before class started, the teacher, the professor went and got out of the chemistry lab a product called butyric acid, and he put it upstairs behind the door. No one could see it. Class started. I remember 8 a.m. in the morning, class started, and we all started shuffling in. And I was a good student. I always like to sit on the front, believe it or not. I actually like to sit on the front. The teacher started the class, and within a few minutes, the people that were way up at the top of the classroom started looking at each other, holding their noses, kind of complaining, talking, and the teacher would get mad, pretend to get mad, and he says, "Hey, you guys at the top, be quiet." You know, and then it got worse, and then it started migrating down a few minutes later, and a little bit later down, and within another 5-10 minutes, I started to smell, the whole room was out of control. Everyone was looking around. Some people were gagging. It smells so bad. The teacher just started laughing his head off. He walked up the stairs, grabbed the bottle. He put the lid on it, and he says, "Class dismissed." And he says, "That is diffusion," and I'll never forget that. Anyway, it's just movement of air, like opening a bottle of perfume and leaving the cap off, and then it just randomly fills the room. As molecules hit into each other, it just randomly fills the room, requires no energy. It just happens. Osmosis is also high to low. usually, but the difference is there's a membrane. There's a definite membrane in place, and it's selectively permeable. Your cells, going back up here for a minute, okay, this membrane right here, this membrane is selectively permeable, and things can go in and out of the membrane through osmosis. So some things can get in, some things cannot. Facilitated diffusion is still diffusion. It's still high at a low. Sorry, there's my pager. I'm not on call, but I will silence it. I apologize for that. Okay, I've silenced it. Okay. So facilitated diffusion is high to low, but with a helper molecule, with a helper molecule. A good example of this is insulin. Insulin is a helper molecule that grabs onto glucose and helps it go across the membrane. Glucose can't enter cells without permission. That permission is it has to have someone hold its hand and walk it across the membrane. And that helper molecule is called insulin. Filtration is just something where we separate solids from a liquid, kind of like a sieve or a colander. We separate the spaghetti from the water. That is what filtration is. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about, which takes a few minutes, is all the 4 types of tissues, different examples of those tissues, and their function in the human body. All right, I'll continue to change colors. How about purple this time? So there are 4 major tissues. We have epithelial tissue. There are several different kinds. So for instance, if we're looking at the air sacs of our lungs, they're only 1 cell thick so that oxygen and carbon dioxide can diffuse across it. So diffusion is actually the purpose. The type of cell that is only 1 cell thick is called simple squamous. Squamous means flat. So they're very simple. They're 1 cell thick. Simple cuboidal are shaped like little cubes. So if these are shaped like pancakes, simple cuboidal are shaped just like cubes. And a really good place they're found is in ducts. For instance, in the kidneys. Our kidneys have ducts that secrete things. And that's actually one of its main purposes is secretion. Our digestive tract has a type of epithelial that is shaped like little columns. Therefore, it is called simple columnar because it's shaped like little columns. And it's found throughout our intestinal tract, and its main job is absorption. They help to absorb the nutrients that we need to live. Okay, going down, air passages in our trachea. Now, these are a little bit different. So we're talking about the ones right here in our throat. They are still a type of epithelium, but they're lined in a special way. They're actually called pseudostratified. Pseudo means fake. Ciliated epithelium. You know what that means is basically from here to here in our windpipe and down into our bronchioles, where those little cells are lined with little hairs, little silly hairs that move up. They beat upwards so that when we breathe in air, anything that's in the air, dust, particles, whatever, they get trapped along the mucus that's lining those, and the hairs move it up our throat, and you got to get rid of them every so often or swallow them to get rid of those extra things. So if you're in a dusty environment, for instance, you may generate more mucus, more of that material because the cells are working hard to get it up out of the body. So this is sort of a cleaning mechanism. People that smoke, they end up, these tiny ciliated hairs die and they stop functioning. And that's why a smoker may develop a smoker's cough, a deep, hard cough to try to get things out of the lungs because that cleaning system has failed. The outer layer of our skin is called stratified, which means layers. Stratified. Squamous epithelium, or just stratified epithelium is fine. I'll put squamous. So it's those flat ones, but they're layered. They're designed that way so that your skin can slough off. You're always replacing your skin. The whole thing gets replaced every few months or so. So we're leaving our skin everywhere we go. So its main job is protection. It's to block what goes in and out, to keep things out, if that makes sense. Okay, transitional epithelium is found in our bladder. It's a special kind of epithelium because it's extremely stretchy. It's designed in such a way that it's bound that it can stretch greatly, and that's what makes our bladder work. All right, connective tissue is next. We have multiple kinds. We have loose connective tissue, which is binds skin to organs. So your skin is bound to the underlying layers, and it's a binding agent, helps hold things together. We have adipose tissue, which literally means fatty tissue, and it's found throughout our body. It stores energy, but it also plays a really big role in cushioning too. It's important. It cushions our organs, so they have fat around them that help them, withstand shock and things like that. Okay, fibrous connective tissue is found in our bones, connecting bones and connecting organs together. And it's also mostly used for support, just a support framework that helps hold things together. Okay, covering ends of bones is types of cartilage. There are varieties of different kinds. We're going to keep this simple. Its job is to reduce friction, and it prevents the rubbing of bones together, because that's always bad to have bone rubbing on bone. So those cartilage caps act as a way to protect the bones from touching each other, to make a barrier. Elastic cartilage is found in our ears, nose. It's also found in our larynx. So think about how flexible your nose is, how flexible your ears are. They're designed to be laid on and sleep on. That's a type of cartilage. It's very flexible. Okay, and that's kind of what its purpose is. It bends. It's designed to bend, and that's one of its functions. Fibrocartilage is very unique. It's found between our vertebrae. So in between each vertebrae, you have a pad of fibrocartilage. It's designed to be extremely tough, so it can absorb shock. And it also allows for flexibility, the ability for you to flexibility. It doesn't look right to me, but that's okay. I think that's as an I, sorry. Flexibility. So think about you moving your spine. It's very flexible, yet super strong, and withstand you jumping and stuff like that. All that force, it's designed to do that. Okay, dense connective tissue is found in our skeleton. It allows, again, for movement of joints. It's very strong. It's also found in things like tendons and ligaments. So I probably should put that, tendons and ligaments. It's very strong. Okay, and then blood circulates throughout the whole body, and it's, of course, is to move nutrients around and waste, CO2 and other waste products. Okay, now we're down to muscle. Muscle is a type of tissue. There are three kinds. Skeletal muscle is found to connect bones to bones so we can move. That's its main job, is movement. We also have smooth muscle, which is found in organs that we don't control, such as your intestines. It's involuntary. I should have put voluntary up here, if that makes sense. Voluntary means you can move it. I mean, look at me move my arm. Wow, that's cool. That's skeletal muscle. But your intestines move and move your food around. You don't have to think about it. You don't control it. You can't control it. It controls itself. And then the last one is cardiac. Cardiac is only found in the human heart, and that's what it is. It's the heart. And it's designed to contract billions of times, yet be strong and flexible all at the same time. Okay, lastly is nervous tissue, found virtually everywhere. It's found in all places in the body where nerves have to allow for movement, sensory organs, stuff like that. And its entire job is for electrical conduction. Now, it doesn't matter if you touch your arm and you feel it, that was done through electricity. It doesn't matter if you're digesting your pizza you had for dinner, that's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's all done through electrical conduction. Okay, that ends this page. Are there any questions on any of that? Hopefully I'm not going too fast. We're doing well. We just got a little, in about another 20 minutes. I'm planning to finish by 8 o'clock your time if I can. Okay, on to the next page. Number 9. What tissues in the body regenerate and which do not? So pretty straightforward. Nerves, neurons, no, they don't regenerate hardly at all. Muscles, mostly no. They can regenerate slowly in a fashion where they create scar tissue. Micro tears in muscles will repair, but major damage to muscles, if you just took a knife and just sliced your bicep muscle, that's not going to grow back. That's going to be a permanent thing. It would have to be surgically repaired to have any hope of using it again. Epithelial tissue, yes, very actively regrowing all the time, replacing, fixing. You're sloughing off your intestinal wall all the time, making new cells, your skin, up your nose, down your throat, all being recycled. Blood, of course, yes, very, very rebuilt. You like rebuild your whole blood every like 90 days or so. I can't remember the exact number. That's why you could donate blood about every 55 days. You can completely donate blood because you're remaking back that pint of blood that you've given. Okay, number 10, explain the difference between serous, synovial, and mucous membranes. So very quickly, serous, synovial, and mucous membranes. Whoops. Okay, serous membranes line cavities that are closed to the exterior. So that would be like your chest cavity. Well, that's not exactly right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of something else. So like your abdomen is a good example. Your abdomen is lined with the serous membrane. It's not open to the outside world. Synovial is the same thing. It lines cavities of Yes, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit. It lines cavities of freely moving joints. So you have synovial cavities in your elbow, your shoulder, in those kind of places. And then the last one is mucous membranes line cavities open to the exterior. So your nose is open, your ears open, your mouth open to the outside world, and they're lined with mucous membranes. Okay, number 11, what is the difference between osteoblasts and osteoclasts? Pretty easy. Blasts build. They build bone. Clasts destroy bone. And this happens constantly in our body. We're reframing our skeleton every 3 or 4 years, completely rebuilding our skeleton. Blast build, and right behind it, class destroy. Sort of like a little conveyor belt. If you're building in one place, you're destroying in another, and vice versa. What are the largest internal and external organs of the body? So internally, our largest internal organ is our liver. Externally, it's our skin. What is the difference between tendons and ligaments? Pretty easy. Tendons, ligaments. I'm going kind of fast. I apologize if I am. I want to be done in a reasonable time. I can stop and pause for a minute. So tendons connect bone to muscle. In fact, when you look at a muscle, they're kind of cool. When you look at a muscle, they actually start on one side, they're very white. And then you get the body of the muscle, which is more that reddish, purpley color. But basically what happens is the muscle just grades into a tendon. They just grade into tendons, just like that. Ligaments, on the other hand, connect bone to bone. to give support and strength and structure to those structures in the body. Okay, the next couple of things we're not writing anything on. I'm just going to briefly mention a few things. So question 14 is on the nervous system. The nervous system is divided into two great big branches, the CNS and the PNS. The CNS is central nervous system, which only includes the brain and spinal cord. That's it. It's called central because it's found central. If you think about your brain and spinal cord, it's in the central part of your body, and that's all it is. Now, the PNS, the peripheral nervous system, is everything else that's attached to it. And it's broken down into several different fragments. So it's pretty straightforward. If you take a look at the PNS, you divide it into autonomic or somatic. The only real big difference here is autonomic means automatic. Whoops, I was going to write right there. Autonomic literally means automatic. So this is the stuff you don't have to think about doing. The beating of your heart, the squishing of your blood vessels. All of this is done completely without your control. Somatic, on the other hand, is voluntary, and that includes somatic means body. So my ability to move my arms, my legs, to talk is all controlled by the CNS. The autonomic nervous system is broken down further into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Some textbooks make the enteric system separate. It just depends. But the parasympathetic is sort of bringing everything down, like back to normal, whereas sympathetic kind of brings everything up. So if you are hiking in the mountains and you suddenly come around a corner and there's a bear standing right in your path, the sympathetic nervous system brings everything up. This is actually backwards. I'm going to change that. Sympathetic nervous brings everything up. It increases heart rate, blood pressure, everything goes up. You become superhuman for 6 seconds. You're able to run and do things you normally can't do. The parasympathetic brings everything back down. It brings it and calms it back down. And these systems work in opposition to each other and balance them out. That's really all I'm going to say on that. The enteric system is sometimes classified as a separate system because it's 100% under its own control. So your whole digestive system is run through this system. But in reality, it's just part of the autonomic nervous system. All right, that's all I'm going to say on that. Is there any questions on any of that? Okay. The next thing I'm going to talk about quickly are hormones, just briefly. We'll just go down this list and then we'll talk about the brain and a couple of other things, and then we'll be done. So obviously there's dozens and dozens of hormones. This is only a small list of the more important ones. And actually that's not even correct. Most important is not correct. This is just some of the ones that maybe we hear of more commonly known to us. So the thyroid, there's thyroxine and calcitonin. The thyroid in general regulates metabolism. It helps maintain the body's ability to use glucose. It also helps maintain our body temperature. Calcitonin's job is to actually control blood calcium levels. The parathyroid, which is found in your thyroid, there's 4 of little dots that are found here in your throat, in your thyroid, and its whole job is to release calcium from bones. Calcitonin inhibits it. Parathyroid hormone makes it release it. The pancreas itself is a complex organ that does several different things besides just making these hormones, but insulin is the big one. Insulin is made in beta cells, and its job is to help the body absorb glucose. Remember, it's a carrier molecule. Glucagon does the opposite. So what happens is if you eat a lot of sugar, your body will use what it can. It'll take the rest and convert it with, it'll take glucagon and convert it into glycogen and store it in your liver. When you stop eating for a period of time, your cells still need energy. And so it will take that and convert the glycogen back into glucose so your body can use it. Okay, our reproductive system has 2 major glands, the testes and the ovaries. Both make very important hormones. The big ones are testosterone. Testosterone helps maintain sperm production in males, and all of our male sexual characteristics, the deepening of our voice, the body hair, all those kinds of things. Females do have testosterone. You do make testosterone, just in very low quantities. Ovaries make estrogen, which stimulate egg maturation and controls also female sexual characteristics. And progesterone is another one that helps prepare the uterus for a fertilized egg. There's many more. There's lots more, but that's as far as we need to go to today. The adrenal glands on top of each of your kidneys create epinephrine and norepinephrine. There are more, but those are the main ones. And they trigger and stimulate the fight or flight response. They bring everything up, stimulating the sympathetic nervous system. The adrenal cortex itself, these are not the adrenal glands, but the cortex, which is sort of on the outside, make a variety of what are called glucocorticoids. And they are mainly part of our stress response. Again, they work with epinephrine to increase blood sugar, to give us kind of energy when we need it really quickly. It slows down our immune response, and it slows our digestion and all that stuff, because those aren't important when it's fight or flight, when your body's trying to survive. Aldosterone is also made, and it helps regulate sodium content in the blood. And then finally, the pineal gland, which is found in the brain, makes melatonin, and that melatonin regulates sleep cycle, which helps us know when to be asleep and awake. Now, the one that I left off here on purpose is actually the, sorry, my pencil's having an issue, just 2 seconds. Okay, I think it's working again. The pituitary gland, which we sometimes call the master gland, makes dozens and dozens of hormones. The posterior and the anterior portion each make different kinds of hormones. We won't go into that right at this moment. I know that was in your homework, however. Okay, quickly, we'll talk about just the parts of the brain. We have the frontal. The frontal mainly controls decision-making. It helps to make decisions, executive function, we call it. The parietal lobes, located on both sides, deal with spatial analysis, like where we are in space and time. It also helps regulate pain and touch. The occipital lobe is mainly for vision. The temporal lobe on both sides is somewhat for speech. Broca's area, somewhat for hearing, and somewhat for short-term memory. To be honest, to say that each part of the brain does kind of like one thing is really incorrect. The brain works in conjunction with each other. All parts are doing different things. But when we say it kind of focuses on these different areas, that's kind of what I'm talking about. But there's certainly no reason why the occipital lobe can't participate in other kinds of things like spatial reasoning. It just kind of depends on how it's all wired. Okay, and then we have the cerebellum, which is the back part of your brain here, and its main job is to coordinate movement. Heard of a lady in China that was born without one, yet she was still able to walk and talk and jump and run because the rest of her brain took over the function of her cerebellum. It was amazing that happened. The brain stem down here is made up of many different parts. We have the medulla oblongata, the pons, and the brain stem itself. All I'm going to put down there is it maintains what we call life functions or primitive functions, such as breathing, heart rate, skin dilation, coughing, vomiting, a variety of things like that. Sexual response, sexual drive is all controlled through the brainstem. Okay, we're going to be done here in just a few minutes. Any questions on anything I've done so far? All right. The last little bit here, we'll go pretty fast. Metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions that happen in the body. And it's measured through temperature. So this flow chart that I've created here, I use in my classes to show the pathways that things go. It's way more complex than this, but I'll just kind of keep it simple here. So the sun is on there because it really does start with the sun. Photosynthesis is the process where plants, green plants, can take carbon dioxide out of the air and use solar energy and water to make a usable product by us. We call it glucose. Glucose is C6H12O6, and when you eat glucose, it enters your cell with the help of insulin. And in the cytoplasm, it goes through a process called glycolysis. Glycolysis breaks glucose in half. So think of glucose has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. When glycolysis is all done, it produces a product called pyruvate. Pyruvate, that's a U, which is now 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It broke that 6 carbon chain in half. It produces only 2 ATP, and it takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. Now, in our bodies, if there's no oxygen present, if there's not enough oxygen, the body goes into what we call fermentation. There are 2 kinds of fermentation. We have lactic acid fermentation, which happens in humans, which only produces 2 ATP per molecule of glucose. So it's very low energy. Now, there's debate on whether it causes the muscle pain, the burn. That's probably not the fault of lactic acid. But if lactic acid is present, it means the muscles have run out of oxygen, and they're trying to continue giving energy to the cells by switching over to lactic acid fermentation. The problem is, as you can see, it's only 2 ATP. It's a very low energy system. So you try to bench press one more time, and you just can't do it. You just don't have enough energy stores. There is another kind called ethanol plus CO2, which we don't do, which only makes 2 ATP as well. And this is done by yeast and some bacteria. It'd be interesting if we did. If every time you exercise, you'd get drunk. That would be interesting. Our whole society would be different. But that's ethanol, sorry, ethanol. I can't spell tonight. What we want is the oxygen pathway. We want lots of oxygen. You breathe it in. As that enters your cells, the pyruvate is converted into acetyl-CoA and enters the citric acid cycle. Citric acid cycle, which generates 2 ATP. But it also makes some other friends. Nicotinamide adenosine dinucleotide phosphate and nicotinamide adenosine dinucleotide. All they are energy molecules that carry electrons, and it takes place in the mitochondrion. Bottom line here is we're starting the process of making a lot of energy. The big energy is made in what's called the electron transport chain. Here's where the magic happens. 34 ATP per 1 glucose are possible for a grand total of 36 ATP per 1 glucose. This is excellent. So as you can see, oxygen is kind of necessary. It's absolutely necessary. Okay, we're down to our last 2 big questions here, last 3 questions. This question literally deals with, can you tell me a quick function of each of the major body systems? So I'll just do this quickly. Reproductive systems, of course, are baby making, things like that, egg and sperm formation, okay, all that kind of stuff. Tegumentary system is our skin, nails, hair. It provides protection. The endocrine system is our hormone system. I like to call it the master system because it regulates through hormones what all the other systems can do. The muscular system itself enables movement. It also helps regulate body temperature. The nervous system detects and processes sensory information. Remember, it's also that electrical system that everything runs on. Skeletal system is mostly movement. It's also used for blood formation, blood component formation. We're almost done. I know it's 8 o'clock your time. Give me just 5 minutes and we'll wrap this up. Cardiovascular system delivers O2 and nutrients to cells, helps to remove metabolic waste. It does more than that. The lymphatic system is sort of the garbage collection system. Cleans up the mess. It's also our immune system. Very important. Digestive system helps our body absorb nutrients from the food that we eat. The urinary system removes metabolic wastes. And then the respiratory system exchanges CO2 and O2 in the blood. It does more than that, but that's its main function. Sorry, I'm getting sloppier as we go. I'm almost done, I promise. Last little bit of information here, and then I will be done. Any questions? All right, the last page is just a couple of things. What's the difference between positive and negative feedback systems? So I'll just go like this. A positive system goes from, kind of interesting, it goes from normal to chaos. What does that mean? Well, I'll give you 3 examples. Childbirth, milk production, and blood clotting. Blood clotting. So think about it. Woman's pregnant, her body is normal, then hormones kick in and throws the body into chaos. That causes the uterine contractions, that causes the very muscle fibers to change, relaxin is released to make everything more stretchy. It takes the body's norm and throws it into chaos. It's like milk production. It takes the breast, which doesn't make milk under its normal circumstance, and throws it into chaos, saying, you will now make milk. Blood clotting is the same thing. Blood components traveling through your system are normal. You cut yourself, that throws the body into chaos and forces the body to go into a state other than norm. And so that means negative feedback systems are exactly the opposite. You go from chaos to norm. So a couple of examples are things like temperature regulation, temperature regulation, blood pressure, something we called osmoregulation. So your body gets hot, you're in chaos, you're sweating, it's hot outside, your body's overheating, you're going to die, you're in chaos. Your body says, nope, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to put you back to normal. You're going to sweat. You're going to release water on your skin. You're going to evaporate that water. We're going to go back to the norm. That's the difference. Okay, last question for tonight is, what are the major elements found in the human body? So one fast way to remember the biggies is a little acronym I call CHOMPS. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Each of these components found in the body make up the largest fraction of the body for the most part. You don't really need to know these numbers, but I just kind of want to show you that our bodies are mostly water, right? There are other components like potassium. We have sodium in our bodies, which is about 0.2%. We have chlorine in our bodies, which is about 0.2% as well. That helps nerve conduction. We have magnesium, which is a cofactor, helps enzymes work. We have calcium, which is about 1.5%. And then if we put some of these together, the human body is roughly around 62% water. That varies from person to person a little bit. Protein is next. Protein in our bodies around 16%. That's all of our muscles and our blood. Fat, depending on your body, is also around 16%. That varies a little bit. Carbohydrates is actually really small because your body's using them all the time. It doesn't store them a great deal. And then random minerals, just other minerals that are found in our bodies, there's about 6%. That is the end of our review. That's about everything you need to know. It's not 100% inclusive, so you need to study. You're not going to, that's not absolutely everything. It is the big bulk of what you need to know, but please, please, please take some time. You don't have to take the test tonight. You have till Sunday. Maybe spend a few days studying and going through some stuff, and then take your test a little bit later in the week, and enjoy a little bit of a break from the homework and stuff. And hopefully this material is working for you. It's brand new material, fresh from Rice University, that I have altered and made possible into this class. We are the first class to use it, and another class that another teacher, we have combined together to make this class work. So I hope it's working for you and you're learning a lot. It's not easy building a class from scratch, because the old class was in Schoology, the old system. And when we brought it over to Canvas, it was a mess. And we're like, no, I spent months during the summer, almost 3 months, rebuilding this course. And it's not 100% done, but it will be done. You'll never know the difference. Are there any questions I can answer before I let you go tonight? Okay, again, I have recorded this. I will post this onto Canvas. It'll be under Studio, which is on the left of your screen when you're in Canvas. Thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. You're very dedicated to be here, and it will be to your benefit. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We will do something again for the final. Okay, I'm going to shut her down. Thanks, you guys.